welcome to the B Team Podcast. I am your host, Josh Safran, with my co-host,
Matt Mars,
and our permanent guest,
Rob Nelson.
We're here every week to talk to you about all things Bentonville, bourbon, and business. The B Team Podcast. Be here. Welcome to the B Team Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Safran, with my co-host,
Matt Mars.
And no permanent guests today because...
Well, we have one here.
Well, I love how you and your lady friend wore the same matching green attire today.
Yeah,
what's her name? Bobina?
Well, her name's, I don't know what her name is. It could, no,
is there a label on the back? Because it might have a...
Oh, wait.
Suzy?
She's the dance hall girl.
The dance hall girl. Yeah, there you go.
Well, Karen's going to be a little jealous.
Yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Well, we're here all Thursdays for things Bentonville, business, and bourbon. And typically when we use the term dusty, like my wife talks about, like, hey, you're the dusty old husband that I married.
Mm-hmm.
This is a different version of dusty today. And I learned this terminology from our friend Stephen Mansfield. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Like, I have never heard of and seen a dusty before. And then I started spending some time with Stephen. And the dusty definition is?
Basically, it's anything that's over 20 years old. But in my vernacular, generally they fall from liquor or whiskey produced prior to the 60s. Stuff that's in the 70s are sort of dusty, but we're getting more into modern times in the 80s, 90s.
Because it all changed in that era, too.
It did. The way it was produced, the flavors, the quality, very different. Yeah, the oaks especially. Yeah, wood, if you know anything about bourbon, the wood that's used produces the bulk of the flavor that's in the whiskey.
Well, that's my first learning, because we started having these recently through you. Mm-hmm. The color, like the depth of the color of the new stuff versus the dusty stuff.
That a lot depends on the age. For example, this...
Starting right away. Let's go.
Yeah, we'll get into this. Okay, this is pretty dark.
Yes.
That's in 10-year age.
But that to me looks like Dr. Pepper or Coca-Cola with no fizz. Like, it's that dark.
Yeah.
Versus
This one here.
I mean, you can see the difference in color.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is 8, which is, so it's less. This is 10 and maybe 12. So a lot of it has to do with how long it's been in the wood.
And also
the warehouse.
And the warehouse, yes. How the temperatures, how much the temperatures vary, how high it is in the rick house, how low. So there's a lot of variables.
But you collect, drink, like you morphed away from the allocated current stuff, and this is sort of your hobby?
It's my hobby, and it's also what I prefer to drink.
Why?
Okay, so if you go into... let me take you back to Prohibition, okay? Here in the U.S.,
I was not born during Prohibition.
Nor was I, actually pre-Prohibition. Before Prohibition, we had probably 100 to 200 distilleries in Kentucky and over 1,000 in this country. Most of them were up in Maryland and Pennsylvania. Those distilleries are small farm distilleries. They grew rye. It grew really well, and they made a lot of rye. Kentucky and Tennessee have predominantly been bourbon production. And once Prohibition came in, it basically decimated the industry. Those 1,000 to 1,500 distilleries that we had really got down to single digits. And during that time, you could buy whiskey, buy bourbon, if you had a prescription. Pretty much everybody was sick. and they could buy a half pint, I think it was 1/2 pint a week, or 1 pint a week, I'm sorry. And you had a prescription label on the back of the bottle. They were all 100 proof. They were all in bonded warehouses. So it was bonded 100 proof whiskey, really high quality to the extent that they were left over. Most of the distilleries at the time had bought up production that was made in the early years before that. And after about 13 years, when Prohibition was repealed, the market started up again, but they had really didn't have any product, okay, because everything was sold as medicinal. So some distilleries started up again, and this takes a long time. Unlike vodka, which you can distill and sell probably pretty close to the same day, you just put it in a bottle. Bourbon requires aging. So at least 4 years, for decent bourbon, 4 years. It actually doesn't have to be. But decent ones are stored for 4 years, some 6, some 8. or more. And so there was a time where there was little production. So the distilleries really ramped up production a lot. But we went through a thing in the 50s and 60s, if you recall, Johnny Carson, celebrities started drinking vodka. Sean Connery came out as James Bond, and he had his martinis,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And so the cool people started moving to white or clear distilled spirits, and the bourbon distilleries were still making tons of bourbon, expecting everything to pick up again, but they weren't able to sell it. So we have what we call the glut period, and the glut period is those years from, call it the late 50s, early 60s, up through 70s and 80s, where they had way more whiskey than they knew what to do with. And they had to sell it because some of it was getting really old, 15 years, 18 years. For this country, that was highly aged bourbon. They decided to start collectors clubs. And Beam started it in the late 60s, and they started making decanters. And they advertised them as collectibles. Save them, these are rare, they're individuals, and people started buying them and putting them up on shelves and not drinking them. Okay? So some were drank, but others weren't.
So the decanters were just getting the bourbon whiskey out.
Exactly. It was moving product. They couldn't move.
More because not because they were drinking it, because they were collecting.
They're also
kind of like what we're at now.
But you get the double-edged positive sword here is you're getting quality bourbon that's high age.
Yes.
But you're getting a work of art.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look at this work of art, and it's incredible to see these from back in the day.
That you just don't get anymore.
No. But we are, and we can talk about this later, we are getting back into sort of a glut. Bourbon purchasing and drinking has slowed down a little bit compared to what's being currently distilled. In any event, so I started getting into this back in about 2010. At the time, I just was interested in bourbon. I started as someone who wasn't tall enough to reach this desk at Family Affairs. I had family members who pushed scotch on me. And I learned to drink scotch, but I really, really enjoy the sweetness, the flavor profile of bourbon. And so I started collecting harder to find regular distributed whiskeys and bourbons back then, and finally came across a couple of decanters. And I loved the taste. It was wonderful. Some of them were the same or better than what was on the shelf. And they were cheaper for me to acquire. If you have a glass bottle, it's very easy to see whether the whiskey is clear, right? If you have a decanter, it's not. And it's also hard to tell exactly how full is this, right?
Yeah.
So it spawned probably a huge, I guess, renaissance for many of us in this community to go out and look for these old decanters that are still in barns and in basements and all that stuff. And
so this would be somebody who would have purchased it back in the day for the artwork or for the, I got to have this one compared to this one sitting next to me on the shelf.
Correct.
But was never drinking it. And so now 30, 40 years later, they're just sitting in people's homes.
That's correct. So, and what you see here on the table are all from one collection that I recently was able to acquire. Kind of an interesting story. There was a ad on Facebook, and basically it said, my dad had this collection, I don't know anything about it, what's it worth, how do I get rid of it? And
was it on a bourbon page, or was it just on a regular
Facebook marketplace page.
Interesting.
And I sent him a quick text message, and he responded. I asked him where he was. He said he was in central Arkansas. I said I'm up here in northwest Arkansas, not too far. In the meantime, there's like 20 people trying to hit him up who live in California and New York and whatever, because this is very rare to find. And I offered to go down and just share my knowledge with him and help him figure out what the best distribution strategy.
You would have done the same thing. You would have went down and helped them share knowledge. And
But I wouldn't have had any knowledge.
No knowledge.
But not everyone that you found was a winner.
No, that was interesting. He had over 1,000 decanters. Interesting guy, very wealthy. He had died about 4 years ago. His wife died 2 years ago. The kids were trying to sell the house. And the real estate agent said, get rid of all this stuff. Okay. So
They're going to have to do that at my house.
So I really, of course.
Not for another 40
Yeah,
years.
hopefully not.
So I went downstairs. They followed him to the basement, and my jaw dropped.
Oh, did you keep a poker face or no?
Not quite. I wish I tried. But he had 6 shelves high all around the basement, every single wall, and they were packed in 3 and 4 deep. And then he had a back room, and I'll show you a couple that I pulled out of the back room, that were all mint in the box like they had never come off the store shelves. Basically, he was one of the senior people in the Jim Beam Razorback Collectors Club, which doesn't exist anymore, but was an Arkansas-based Jim Beam Collectors Society. And he was also a senior member of a lot of other brands, collectors clubs as well. And he would buy 3 or 4 of every decanter he could find. One he would open with friends, and 2 or 3 he put back.
So the one second. So in 30, 40 years, this will be Mallory and Kennedy and Alex. Except the difference is you didn't share one with friends. They're all sitting there in your closet. Please.
No, it's okay. So I shared with him some of my knowledge, and ultimately was able to. I told him I buy these for the whiskey that's inside. At the time, which is absolute opposite of how they were sold, right? They were sold to be a collectible, to be worth a fortune. Now, some of them are limited editions, some as small as 500 pieces for the entire country. Others are unlimited, but...
so some of these are valuable in the resale market, and others are
No, nobody cares about the decanters anymore.
Nobody cares.
No, basically, the people that care, unfortunately, are passing away. They're just like other things of our generation, our kids don't care about, right? Yeah. And we think they're cool. And so the same thing. So now we have younger people that are getting into bourbon and whiskey, and they are interested in the decanters for the product inside. So you can go on eBay if you want. eBay does not allow you to sell with any liquid in it. It's got to be empty. And you'll see most of them sell for $5 to $20. There really is very little demand. Okay. Whereas...
So now this full Matthew's girlfriend.
I don't know if this one's full.
It is full.
But if that one's full...
It just... Oh, wait. Is that empty? Oh, you don't...
Oh, no. The corks.
So you just broke the head off.
I didn't... No. Is there anything in there?
Well...
Don't turn it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, you don't want that then. You can take it home. I don't care. You can have it. I will.
You can't. There's a cork here still.
Oh, is it still?
Yeah.
Okay, full cork. Then you're fine.
Because it's not a leaker.
It's not a leaker. Okay, good.
So, but what is? So, if somebody was to find that on the secondary market, I know selling bourbon is illegal. I understand that.
Okay, but there is a trading groups,
of course,
that people that are into this. We do work deals to share information, knowledge, and occasionally whiskey.
I brick.
No, those do pull out fairly easy, and there's cork underneath most of them. So if it's not leaking, you're good.
Yeah.
And that's what you said you found some that were totally empty on the shelf.
Yes.
Just evaporated?
Consumption or evaporation?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think there were consumption ones there, but there may have been. Approximately half of his 1,000+ collection was empty. And so I advised them to...
Dump. Throw out, right?
I said, I'll take them if you want them out because you want to sell the house. And they asked me what I'd do with them. And I said, probably put them in a dumpster because they're not worth much to me. And they were a gas that Dad's collection would end up in a dumpster. So we talked about flea markets as an option. We talked about eBay as an option. We talked about some collectors' societies where there's still people that are interested, but not to expect much money. And then I took what I thought was 469 full decanters that don't leak. And I don't buy ones that leak because that means that oxygen has entered into the decanter and it's likely to have deteriorated in quality. But in the back room, the safe room, where everything was in boxes still as it came off the store shelves, there would be maybe 3 or 4 in a row. I pulled off the one that's right at the edge, the first one, and I was really shocked that it was empty, completely empty. They had evaporated. And then I pulled the one behind it, and it maybe had half or 3/4 full. And the 2 that were furthest back, totally full. And it took me a little while, a couple of trips to realize, so this is in a basement. The back walls were concrete block. so it was cooler back there. And it was also the furnishing for the house. So
Makes sense.
heat was generated. The ones in front that had the heat evaporated, and then they kept the ones behind from evaporating.
Thank God there were ones
Yeah,
behind.
yeah, absolutely. So I ended up acquiring about 600.
Wow.
And these are all lead free.
Well, yeah, I don't want to say all lead
But
free. There have been testing. Most do not have a significant amount of lead. Almost everything. Some of the testing has shown minor lead levels, but they generally do not exceed the USD or the federal government's levels in drinking water. So you can drink these just like you drink drinking water. And
So let's try one. Let's,
Sure.
Because I know Matt's excited.
tell you what, let's.
I mean, we're all good friends here, and I'm a freaking kid in a candy store. on
Oh,
this
I
stuff.
am too.
I mean, this is incredible. Like, this is history.
Yeah.
And in anything that we're in any industry, a lot of history has left us, right? But to now, this is living history that we
So
are going to.
cool.
So we're going to start.
Yeah, Steven.
Okay, go.
I see. There we go.
Great.
It's on the camera.
Awesome. So that's a Lionstone 8-year, 86 proof.
That's
8
what
year.
so
Yeah, the label fell
so
off.
what
But
is-
we can drink this.
So Lionstone's no more.
Lionstone is no more, but you told me something new yesterday, right? When you wrote that Lionstone's name has been taken by somebody else.
Yes, but I'm not sure who it is. I
Okay.
I was going to
Do a little research?
on it. Yes.
But it's been acquired by somebody else.
Yes.
And so it's possible it can come back. And so Lionstone today.
This is 8 year.
8-year. Yep, 86 proof. Lionstone today is not available on store shelves. And Lionstone was what we call a non-distiller producer. Basically, they did not make their own whiskey. They acquired whiskey from other distilleries and
Contract distilling.
contract distill.
So it's like
Or it wasn't contract. They just took extra bottles.
Or just-
extra
they're
barrels.
just- yeah,
walk
they're
in and say,
buying
"I want
barrels."
those." Yeah.
Oh my! So, I'm going to be crazy. You're going to think I'm crazy.
No, be critical.
I never thought you were crazy.
Stone fruit, right on the nose. Peach.
yeah, there is a lot of
There is a lot of
peach.
citrus.
Yes, a lot of citrus flavors in this.
Wow, and that. Look at that. It's almost like a red mahogany.
Yeah.
On the color for 8 year.
Which is a sign of really good bourbon.
Yes.
And unfortunately, Lionstone gets no.
I never heard of it.
Well, and therefore they're on the secondary market. They're pretty low because people don't know them. They don't have what it is.
I get a lot of cedar, a lot of leather,
leather for sure. I get a lot of leather in this
little
too.
tobacco. That's before water, guys. This is just right out.
And if you look at the legs on it, it holds the glass really well. Another sign
You
of
see like the sign of the oil on the side. I mean, it's
yeah.
So this is from that decanter. Or
It's actually from another decanter. It's from the Quail decanter.
the quail decanter. Okay.
Yep.
just the one. Thank you.
Yeah, we're already at 86. I'll take
Because
this.
this is history, and
Yeah.
I'm glad that we could all four
To
of us
be
get
able to
together.
do that, like, thank you so much for coming
course.
and doing this.
Well, we have more to try too.
And again, if our friend that's not here today, that he should
Bobby.
be covered up, and I mean, if he was here, he'd be all over this.
he would.
Yeah, it's tasty. It's got a depth of flavor that we don't get today. In
Yeah,
most
like
whiskeys.
that's you're exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's got
And so this is why I have moved to basically drinking only Dusty whiskey. As a matter of fact, if anybody wants to follow me on Instagram, it's Dusty Whiskey Hunter
There we go.
on Instagram.
There's your shout out early in the sesh.
Why not?
I love it.
Right? Might as well take advantage of it. Thank you. Thank
Did you get with those couple drops of water, that leather really popped. Mm-hmm. That licorice really popped.
He's even more like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, I know.
This is very tasty. Well, is there a difference in the way the stuff was made? Is there like difference in the water they were using?
There is difference. So a lot of differences in technology that have evolved over time, right? So in the old days, they just pulled the water out from under the limestone in Kentucky, and that was used as a filtering mechanism to bring the water in. Today, almost every distillery uses reverse osmosis to take all the metals and other things in it that are considered harmful. Well, those things have flavor as well, so it adjusts the flavor.
That's why there's more minerality in this.
Yes, yes.
Today's bourbon.
There's
minerality,
and it even has like a little bit of an earthy taste.
And
Like
to compare it
it's,
to wine, as you go to
taste
different places,
like
this does have a little bit of a terroir effect. If you get Dusties from Maryland or Dusties from Kentucky or Dusties from Tennessee, and it's not just bourbon that's Dusties. I also have a smaller collection of older vintage liqueurs and other liquors that would be in a bar. And part of what's happening today is there's a renaissance with bars that specifically make cocktails with vintage product.
Interesting.
And so they're
At some point, they're going to run out. Like, it's not like there's an endless supply, right?
They have a lot of people around the country. I rarely, but a lot of my friends that are fanatics about Dusty whiskey and other product specifically go searching to sell to those restaurants.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Supply and demand.
Exactly. So
That was good.
That thing. That's good. That thing's cool.
Scared me there.
Bill Cat in a tuxedo there.
exactly. So
You got a cat in a green dress next to you.
Yeah.
So you were asking me about how they're made differently. So,
Yes.
So water is one thing. Another, and the main part we talked earlier about how the cask, the wood, imparts the bulk of the flavor.
Here's
You
a
know,
dump bucket
it's
if you need it.
It's all oak, right? It's everything. All the staves and barrels are made from American oak. In the old days, they would either cut them all up and leave them outside, under some roof for 4 years, 3 years, and let them dry out naturally, or did some killed long-term drying. Today, they are basically fire blasted. So it obviously has a difference on the impact of the wood. And the oak itself, if you look at a 2x4 that's used today in construction versus one from the 60s, you look at the end of the 2x4, you probably have 5 or 6 growth rings, right? In the old ones.
Right?
Well, everyone wonders why wood rots so quick now. It's because it's young.
Yes.
It's not. It doesn't. It's not 100-year-old tree.
No.
It's like you said. It's 5 or 6 years old.
Correct.
And the soft is all.
Yeah, and so if 2x4 today, you're lucky to get 2 or 3 growth rings, right? Well, if you remember your high school, biology, the xylem and phloem is what brought the nutrients to the top of the plant.
You found
Then trees.
last in you.
Yeah.
Like you see this as a home on the houses that you renovate. Some of those old 2x4s and those wood.
You can't get the nails out of it.
No, they're hard.
Yeah.
They're hard.
And you go, okay, and then because I've seen it on the show where you look at these grains, how tight they were, and multiple rings, they were darker influences as far as the wood color.
Correct.
Yeah, it just shows you how.
And
our wood has changed.
those rings have sugars in them. So as barrels sit in a rick house, when it gets cold in the winter, right, it all draws in, and when it gets hot in the summer, the whiskey that's in it expands and goes out into the wood, and it pulls those sugars to make it sweet and give it flavor, like we just had. And so old barrels taste better than new barrels. And we only use barrels once for bourbon, right? I would let it go by law. Yeah. And so that's another reason. So the water, the wood. Here's another part today. And this doesn't go across all distilleries, but in the old days, they all had their own yeast that they used to start the distillation process. And most of the distilleries would keep that under lock and key, and it had special characteristics that imparted into the whiskey. Today, most distilleries, not all, some still do that, but most use a generic yeast that they buy off the shelf.
Interesting. Fascinating.
But I know, for a fact that yeast is a primary driver of flavor. You can use a wine yeast in bourbon.
Yes,
it completely changes the complexity of the spirit.
Okay,
So what are we drinking next?
So this is the Old Crow. So
That is so
we want to do this one last because that's the highest proof. This one is Old Ezra, which is 90. That's 86. It's 10 years, 86. So this is an Old Crow Chessie. Now,
Now, is there a reason why some of these are repackaged in bottles and some of them are going to still be?
yes, because once I open it,
Yeah.
okay, and this was just open last week, okay. Once I open it, I put it in a bottle just because these corks don't always come off well, and I can't always get it back in the bottle.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so what I do is I decant, and we're going to do that with this one.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so everybody can see how we do that.
Very nice.
But this, so I just put them in a safe bottle. Normally when it gets to this size, I move it down to one of the little bottles. I want as little oxygen in there to mix with the bourbon over time. So I'll do so. So this is totally different taste, really dark, almost like motor oil. It's 86, 10 years. Now, rumor has it that this was not made at Old Crow, at the distillery. Nobody knows for sure. It was, at that point, it was part of a national distiller, NDP, National Distillers Company. And there is discussion, some people think it went to the old Bernheim distillery, but very, very different flavor profile.
Boy, even the smell of it.
Distillers morphed into, I believe, Hiram Walker, that morphed into Allied Domecq, that morphed into present day Beam Suntory, and now it's called Suntory Global.
Yes,
So it had changes. So this is today, Crow is still a Jim Beam product.
But Crow today is a low bottom shelf.
Yes, it is.
This was a top shelf at the
Yes, it
time.
was. That's Old Crow used to be the #1 selling bourbon in the United States.
So just on the nose, complete difference.
That color, again,
Dark.
you get this red tint. It's almost like red mahogany.
Yeah.
Like a deep red mahogany. You stated it earlier, like motor oil.
Yeah. That's how dark this is, right?
What do you get when you smell this? It's hot. It's a little.
It's not hot like a new bottle would be,
but
right?
it's like it has a little bit of burn when you smell it.
does.
But it doesn't.
And
It
it's got
doesn't
a
have that
little
in the
bit-
taste when you drink it. It's
No.
not.
I get big wood sugars, caramelized sugars.
Yeah, it
You know,
does. It's
almost like-
really sugary.
It's almost like creme brulee on the nose.
Yeah.
Creme brulee right out of the oven.
Not the creme brulee that's been sitting out for a couple hours. It has to be right out of the oven.
I've told you this before. All right, this
has
very leathery on the palate. It's very, very leathery, kind of meaty. It's very meaty.
yes.
It's very meaty. There's a lot of depth and character here. You can't go wrong with any descriptor you're going to say on this one.
No, you can't. And it also has just a little bit of what we call a Kentucky hug. So you feel it going down your throat just a little bit, even though it's only 86 proof, which is pretty rare.
Yeah.
Right? Normally you get those on the 110 and 120 proofs where it burns you on your way down. It's unique. And this is, I really like these, but they're very different from what you get in most bourbon today. So interesting.
It's nothing at all like what you get.
There's no comparison.
No, it's not even. It doesn't even taste like you're drinking bourbon.
Well, I mean, we're drinking history here, and this is when, again, I like how bourbon was king back then when these were all produced.
But what's like, this has like a dry finish too. It
does.
It's weird,
almost,
but it's
almost
good.
tannic,
Yeah.
right? And I like when I have to chomp on it.
Yeah, I do too.
one of that, right? It dries.
It's the definition of what a dusty is, because it's very dusty on the back of the palate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very dry.
Yeah.
So interesting marketing for this one. So each of these were sold as individual pieces. So you had to collect 32 of each color. There's a dark and a light. And you bought individually each of the 32 chess pieces. And then you could buy a chess mat. It was basically a woven rug that you can put in your living room floor and play chess with your bourbon decanters.
It's like this generation's version of get the different letters from the Blanton's horse, the B.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you go into somebody's home. And
there's a light pawn. Let me have that, right? Or the dark bishop or whatever. So,
and how often would they sell a new piece?
they were all done within about a 2 to 3 year period.
So it's like, hey, the
they
pawn
were
is
all
out.
out
Everybody
there.
run to the store and go find the pawn
I don't
kind
know.
of thing.
I don't know if that was the case or not, or whether they all came in. Most of the cases that I've bought several cases of these in the past, and normally, the case at that time were usually 12 bottles.
So it was a mixed case.
So it was
12
a
different
mixed
pieces.
case. Yeah, it usually had 2 or 3 different pieces in one case, or chest pieces.
You would have been all over this, like back in the day. But you'd
That's, yeah, I
This
think it's
almost
pretty
looks
cool.
like something
I like
from
that
Easter
kind of stuff.
Island.
It does.
Because that does not look like a chess piece.
No.
Well, this is actually, I think this is
That's the king right
That's
there.
the king.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the king.
Yeah.
I love chess.
You any good?
Yeah, I'm not really good, but I'm okay.
There's also a sweetness that comes with it, with the tannic, right? It's really interesting.
I mean, the wood tannins here are striking. I mean,
Well,
because that's-
given the age, that makes sense.
Yeah. Which one did you like better? Do you like the first one or the second one?
I like the second one.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
First one was good. This one was.
It's amazing. There are some people that think it's the best they've ever had. I'm not quite at that point, but it's certainly my top 10
I
as
get
far as.
like fresh cut vanilla bean, like you get a vanilla bean,
And you slice it open.
and
Yeah.
that's exactly what you get.
I don't even know who you are anymore.
Don't worry, the conversation doesn't end there. Stay tuned for part 2, coming next week.